The Upper Coldstream region on the New South Wales north coast is one of the most biologically rich in Australia and contains the highest diversity of threatened species in New South Wales. The loss and fragmentation of wildlife habitat is degrading this beautiful area and threatening the last population of coastal emu with extinction. This innovative project has been working with the community, helping to bring the species back from the brink. This coastal corridor is a very significant area, and a lot of it's national park, but just as important is the private properties adjoining those areas. And there's thousands and thousands of hectares that are being managed by landholders who are proving to be great stewards of the natural environment and the important habitats that exist through this area.
This landscape is outstanding for its conservation values. It has values that are unique globally. It is the biggest coastal wildlife corridor in New South Wales. It has some of the most incredibly significant wetlands in our country, the Upper Coldstream wetlands. It's the last bastion of the coastal emu. We're close to 1,000 native plant species that we've documented through the course of the project. So we've worked through with a whole host of private landholders, over 40 private landholders across over 4,000 hectares, to restore those few areas of degraded ecosystem. And in the course of the project so far, we've had incredible success in turning areas that are degraded by weeds into areas that are dominated by native species. We've had remarkable success with the regeneration crew, covering many thousands of acres of degraded areas. And even in the space of 2 to 3 years, we've seen incredible improvements in the health of these ecosystems.
We have something like 36 or 7 different myrtaceae trees here. I'm talking about eucalypts, corymbias, angophores, or gum trees essentially. 88 different orchids so far we've found here. It's really a remarkable country. You've got a diversity of habitats. Yeah, it's just a godsend for for botanists like myself to get out there and just track all these things down.
A great motivation for myself and the project team working on the Upper Coldstream Biodiversity Project is the fact that we've got a group of landholders who are so committed, and in some cases have dedicated their time, their money, their family and their life in a lot of cases to looking after this land, and have a dedication and a commitment to doing it well into the future.
So lots of landholders who are involved in the project are excellent custodians or stewards of their landscape. They've been very welcoming of having an externally supported crew coming in and doing work. Those workers, the regenerators, have kind of broken the back of the problem, but there is a need for ongoing regeneration and follow-up. And so many of our landholders have shown themselves to be very capable of coming in the wake of the regeneration crew and making sure that the work that was done improves into the future.
Well, 600 acres is 3 kilometres by 1.5 kilometres, so it's a huge slab of land, and we've got rainforest, we've got wet sclerophyll and dry sclerophyll and swamp and all sorts of bits. But to get in there and do it, where do you start? And some of the areas were just totally overgrown, 5 metres high of lantana. We were nibbling away at bits and pieces, but there was a huge area up in the rainforest that was just, we were dreading going there, and we were saving that to last. And then the Coldstream project came along, and we said, okay, well, send your team up there, which they had 5 or 6 guys up there for a couple of months, and went through and took 95% of the stuff out. Now all we're doing is going along, a couple of hours every second day, and just go to an area and just go in and just check what's reshooting, what hasn't died, and what do we do, but we can now get on top of it. So the project was great because it broke the back of the weed infestation for us, and then it makes it easier for us to manage.
So the work that we've done has made a major impact on the extent of lantana in some of these priority habitats. One of the big things that we've got to focus on now is how we maintain the good work that's been successfully delivered to date. An important part of this is landholder training and building landholder skills in being able to manage weeds on their property.
Through the project and going to some of the workshops, is you realise that within the valley here there are a whole lot of other landowners who are trying to do the same thing with the same aims, and it's good to be able to get to see what their problems are, how they're solving the problem, pass on information and realise that we're not the only ones here doing it. And so if we can start to communicate with them and create corridors for animals like the emus, for example.
One of the areas that we've been focusing on is trying to improve access for emus to be able to get into some of their preferred food source areas. So things like creek lines where there's Garnia and Lamandra that they eat the seeds of, and bangalow palms as well in those rainforest zones are very important. But in a lot of cases the lantana is so dense that it's very difficult for emus to be able to access those areas. The Coastal Emu Alliance evolved from an interest from key stakeholders wanting to come together to start talking about how we can best plan for coastal emu recovery. It now includes a whole range of government agencies, local council, community groups, environmental organisations, interested community members, interested landholders, and all these people have come together and we've undertaken workshops, planning sessions and field trips to try and advance the recovery program for the coastal emu.
It's contracted to having 2 remaining strongholds, one of them on the coastal parts of the Clarence Valley, so centred around the Pillar Valley area, and then a very small population up in the Richmond Valley between Casino and Grafton. The emu is a keystone species, it's an iconic species. It spreads seeds of so many important native plants, so there is a really important relationship between the diversity of the landscape and the presence of the emus. If the coastal emu goes extinct, this landscape will lose value. It will become impoverished in some ways.
The coastal emu is just covers such a great range of different habitats, so they travel big distances and have a real generalist kind of diet, so you can see them right through a varied number of habitats, from coastal areas to dry heath to dry sclerophyll forests and some little patches of littoral rainforest, and all that way they're browsing all that way. And there's been studies that have done that showed they've had up to 1,000 seeds in their 100 grams of scat or dung, so they're a really important seed dispersal vector through this landscape. And the Clarence, we love them. They're our local iconic species, It's just so beautiful to have them in this landscape, and just to lose them when we have so much knowledge and so much know-how, in this day and age, just seems like such a great travesty. So, yeah, they're very important.
One of the problems we realised was if you're an emu with a whole lot of chicks walking, you're not going to go straight through the scrub because you'll lose all the chicks, so they tend to stick to the track. So we keep our tracks open, but then they come to a fence, and how do they get through the fence without creating problems and issues? So we've sort of been experimenting with a few little gates in fences to allow emus to come through but keep cattle out.
It's been a real challenge to know where those birds are breeding and where their nests are, and how we can then actually look at how we might be able to manage and protect them. So we brought Penny in and we trained her onto coastal emu, and then we've been trialling various techniques over the last year or so in terms of whether we work straight onto the nests or we actually work on tracking for odour, feathers and scats. In the meantime, using her GPS collar, actually finding where the birds have been crossing the tracks and foraging or brushing against trees, or where feathers have got caught on barbed wire fences, and actually being able to use her nose to actually work out where emus are in the landscape. Many of the sites where she's found those emus' odour, we haven't found any physical evidence, so you have to trust the dog's nose. Quite often after the fact we then find corroborative evidence like a feather, or maybe the following week, for example, someone will find a scat or see an emu in the area that corroborates what she's finding.
The importance of these landholders is that because they own this land, if you can get them on board, they will then be guardians of their property, and they can create diverse habitat. But this is really good emu food when the seed off these lamandras, and you see how well they're going. So you're going to have a whole little ecosystem right here.
Provided regeneration work and follow-up work is done over time, we'll see lasting outcomes so that these landscapes can remain healthy into the foreseeable future.
With the Upper Coldstream project, there's been a really good, strong effort on the land over the last couple of years, and with the Coastal Emu Alliance, there's a lot of people pulling together to try and actually make sure that this species stays in the landscape. And so we were out the other day doing a workshop looking at tracking skills, and we actually saw 5 emus in one day, and everyone was just beaming. It was such an important thing to actually see them in the landscape where they should be, and just seeing them naturally moving through and doing the things they should do. It's such a privilege to be able to see that.
So this landscape is one of the best areas for investment. We get the best bang for buck by putting effort into restoring this landscape.
The Upper Coldstream Biodiversity Project has been vital in targeting real action to restore habitat for the coastal emus and the other incredible biodiversity in this landscape. What we'd like to see into the future is that the knowledge hub that's been created in the Upper Coldstream continued and maintained to ensure that those skills and knowledge and the capacity building to support our landholders can continue into the future. We're at a real crisis point. There's no glossing over the fact that the surveys are recording less than 50 emus left, the very last of the special Australian birds that once roamed along much of the east coast of Australia. To see this species go extinct in the next few years won't be a disappointment, it'll be a disgrace. This needs a whole of government, whole of community, cross-tenure, collaborative partnerships approach. Everyone needs to see this urgency and join with us now to be part of the solution.